The following is a presentation of the Mat Talk Podcast Network.
You've always got time for Short Time.
Hey, it's Warren Lopez.
David Taylor.
Brent Metcalf. Johnny Hendricks. Tony Ramos. Bubba J.
Mike Golick.
Matthew Modine.
The one and only Chael Sonnen, and you are listening to the one and only Short Time Wrestling Podcast by the often imitated and never duplicated Jason Bryant.
It's the Short Time Wrestling Podcast, episode 341, as we continue into our run to Fargo 2017 with USA Wrestling Events Director Pete Isais. Pete, this thing probably might be the biggest undertaking when it comes to an event in the sport of wrestling. How do you and your staff make this thing work? How has it continued to work for over 20 years in this location?
Well, I tell you, it's a lot of moving parts, but it's nice to come to a place where everybody's been through it and understands what the event's about. And that's it. The Fargodome staff, it starts with them. They've been in place, most of those key players throughout the last 20 years, so they know what's coming. They start setting up. Last Sunday, they started setting up, so they know what happens. And then after that, the athletic department of North Dakota State is very crucial in their coaching staff knowing what to do now. Matt Nagel's been unbelievable this past couple weeks in terms of his planning. So it's nice that they bring new guys in that understand wrestling and get right to work. And then the other side of campus on North Dakota State, the residents' life, they know the housing side of it. Transportation knows he's been in place for a while, and then obviously our staff. So it's nice to have all the key players in place that just know, hey, it's coming. Here's what we got to do day 1, day 2, and day 3, and so on, and just keep going.
Yeah, and as we talk about the relationship with North Dakota State, this is a town you knew pretty well. You you coached there for a while prior to getting the job at USA Wrestling, and how much of that, when you look back on the move from coaching at NDSU with this event in your building to now, okay, well, it looks like I'm the guy moving to Colorado to run this event back at a place I know so well.
Yeah, and obviously when I was on as assistant coach at North Dakota State, a large part of my responsibility and a little bit of my paycheck came from running the junior and cadet nationals, and that's where I really cut my teeth on organization and basically getting ready for a large-scale event like that, which did help me tremendously as I transferred to the USA Wrestling for the director job. It really helped me understand the event, and I think the nice part about what my career path has been is that I understand it from an athlete and I understand it from a coach. So I think when I look at the event, I want to make sure that the athletes and coaches are well informed, and I'm always taking the welfare of the athlete into account when I do things. So I think that's really helped me in my job moving forward also.
This thing came to Fargo in 1993 for the juniors, and then the cadets came with it in 96, and since then it's been a combined event. And back then, when it became a combined event, it was only 4 tournaments. Now there's 7 because we've added the junior women, the cadet women, and the women's junior duels to it. So what happens? Let's just go back to 2002 when you add the 5th tournament, the junior women. How did that tournament, when it came into the family of Fargo tournaments, really start to say, okay, this thing's still going to keep growing?
Yeah, so I think obviously that we have put a big emphasis on our women's wrestling, and our women's wrestling continues to grow by double digits in terms of percentage for us each year. And back when we did add the junior women, there was heartache, obviously, on some of our state leaders and our officials because that took out the Wednesday. Wednesday used to be our totally day off, where people could kind of charge their batteries, go out to the community and do certain things, and they enjoyed that day off. Well, when we added the junior women, that took away our day off, and there was heartache on some people's parts, but I think overall people have realized that it's been a positive move. Like I said, we're continuing to experience our growth, and obviously when you add one division, there's others that certainly follow right after that. We added the junior duels and then the cadet women, and I think it's been good. But at the same time, I think we have committees in place that are looking at the evaluation process of, does it make sense to be in Fargo for for an 8-day period? Do we need to go back to a day off in between? And are the women big enough to go out on their own? So those are the things that we're having discussions about to see if that's something that moving forward, that either we move the women's duals out of Fargo, or do we move all to the cadets and juniors out of Fargo? So those are things that continue to evolve, and we will continue to discuss. But the women have been very positive to have here in terms of allowing them the growth that they've needed.
Yeah, I'll touch on potential moves and things of that nature later on. But as we look at where the tournament has come from all these years, we look back at the entries back. I started coming in 1999. This will be my 19th year. Sadly, the turf will not be open by the time I get there and when I leave, but maybe it's just a matter of time for the old haunt there. But looking at just numbers, and of course back in 99 there weren't as many weight classes. So we've seen, like Cadet Greco, for example, it peaked over 1,000 when they went to Federation weights in 2012, plus the additional 3 extra weights for the cadets. The juniors have 15 weights. And let's just talk about the growth in terms of numbers. Why did USA Wrestling opt to go with the Federation weights in 2002, and then when they changed again in 2012? Why the change to match up with the Federation weights versus the old hammer weights where you'd have junior 143, junior 132? Those were just like 150 deep, just hammer weights.
Well, I think, again, the committees that put those weights into place, the evolution of that was basically they wanted to line up with our high school Federation weights just to avoid confusion. Because when we had the 114.5s and some of those, I think it was 134 or something like that. 143. Those used to be some, like you say, the hammer weights, and I think that it confused a lot of our people that were trying to come from the folk style and transition into our Olympic style. So I think it's the people that were in charge, the committee people, to say, hey, let's make it easy and let's just go with the Federation weight classes and maybe add a couple small ones on the bottom end for our smaller athletes.
Last year's entry totals across all 6 divisions, 4,836. You talk about dealing with North Dakota State and residence life, and then there's the CVB, and then all the hotels that are involved. How, when you want to bring in 5,000 athletes almost, and then you factor in the parents and the coaches on top of that, how does the city typically react to something like this, and how has Fargo evolved over the years in being able to host this, and North Dakota State specifically?
Well, I think that everybody's evolved in terms of they know what the event's about. You don't have to sell the event and say, hey, don't panic. You're still going to be full hotel room wise or residence life wise. You're still going to be full when the tournament starts, because wrestlers were last minute, and that's the thing in the hotel industry. They get very nervous if the rooms aren't booked yet. But I think that they understand the event, so we don't have to educate as much. But they've also evolved in terms of Fargo's grown tremendously since this event was here. There's a ton more hotel rooms, a ton more restaurants, and it stretches a long way south compared to when it used to. So it's evolved as a city, and the Dome has evolved as a facility also. This year we'll get to use some phenomenal HD screens in the Dome. So they've also evolved in terms of the technology side of it too. So I think that everything continues to play good here in Fargo, and it's a nice community, I think, because we just don't have to worry of the kids' welfare, because we do have a ton of athletes who are out running and things like that. So we don't have to worry about someone, falling on the wrong place here in Fargo, North Dakota.
Sports Commission and the Visitors and Conventions Bureau, or Conventions and Visitors Bureau, however you want to title it, they're always active in bringing events to various cities in the bid processes. And what's made Fargo the place that this when it comes open for bid again, it's like, we're just going to keep it here?
Well, I think, again, as an organization, when we look at evaluating any event that goes there, we're looking at not only how is it going to impact the consumer, is it positive for the consumer to go there, is it positive for our officials to hopefully be able to get there, but we're looking at the impact financially to USA Wrestling. And that's where I think Fargo does so well in terms of their package, because we get that deal, or we get the Dome for a smoking deal. And that rental component for a 10-day event with setup involved is really, really tough to look at duplicating. The other thing, and when you look at the welfare of the athlete, is that turf floor providing that extra cushion and the floor space that it provides for people to kind of lay it to spread out with the thick seating is another challenge to duplicate. So those are the main areas that we look at. The other thing on the financial side is dorm rooms for USA Wrestling, housing our officials is half of what we would go to a hotel and pay for hotel and meals. So moving somewhere else where we'd have to go to a hotel component definitely increases our budget tremendously and doesn't help us clear the money that we're clearing in Fargo.
In its current form with the 7 tournaments, how many other places can actually mimic what Fargo does? It seems like it's got to be a college campus and it's got to have a large indoor type of arena. I mean, how many options are there?
Well, and I think that's the footprint now. We've explored, and we're still exploring with the city of Louisville, a situation where it would be at the Fairground Expo Center, and also we'd be housed there and everybody in hotels. So we're looking at Louisville. The new Jerry Jones playland is a place that's circled in because obviously that is controlled by the school district gave them the land. So there's a deal in place where they get, I think, a little discounted rent of that facility. So there's a few around that we continue to look at, but not a lot where you're going to find all the variables that we need in place. But that's not to say that, if some city comes in and says, hey, USA Wrestling, we're going to give you the world, that we're not going to look at things.
A couple things that have been synonymous with Fargo. Of course, I joke about the turf, and that is just one of those particular places. But the second year I was there, so in 99, there was no Buffalo Wild Wings. In 2000, there was Buffalo Wild Wings. And now it is a outdoor patio. This thing, basically, 2 things have built this place: NDSU football and USA Wrestling. So it's one of those places like, well, we're at a wrestling tournament. Where are we going to go? Just like Fargo, we're going to go to B-Dubs. What has been the relationship like in your experiences with the restaurants and the haunts that the coaches like, and the things that you're going to patronize for 8-9 days when you're out there?
Well, I tell you, when I was on the North Dakota State side, those places were very valuable in terms of providing the assets to the athletic department that helped down the road, value in kind. Now, currently, I don't frequent a lot of establishments up towards those coaches. I like to go decompress a little bit more downtown or even South Fargo. But I know that those places, when I do go in, because I still know the LaHazes who run Buffalo Wild Wings up north. When I pop in, they're like, yeah, glad to see you, love what you're doing, things like that. And there's places around town that, those restaurateurs that, if I bump into them, that since I did coach here, that know me, that they really appreciate what we do, what USA Wrestling's doing here, and it's provided a huge impact. I think the numbers are about 15 million is what they figure this tournament, the economic impact here in Fargo-Moorhead.
Yeah, I had the mayor of Fargo on the show 2 years ago talking about the economic impact and how the city and the Fargo-Moorhead region really opened its arms for wrestling. The one thing that I've noticed, you talked about the growth, and the mayor claimed 2 years ago that there would be no construction, and that's I think 19. It will be 19 years in a row when I drive down 29 and 94. There's going to be orange road cones. I mean, the growth leads to construction everywhere. How much has it changed from your experiences when you were there to coming back, all these years later, be like, okay, that's different. Oh, I got a detour. I mean, it's got to be mind blowing for you each and every year.
It's amazing just the change on the campus at North Dakota State. Just they just got a new science building that went up. That yesterday I noticed that it's crazy. They built the rec center. So campus has expanded. Back when I was here, West Acres on 13th Avenue, that was almost somewhat the southern part. That 13th Avenue South, or that area, was basically the southern part. And now this thing, they built I think 3 new high schools since I've been here. West Fargo's blowing up. So yeah, there's a lot of changes. It's funny, my wife had not been back for quite a while, and she came back this summer, and she was just amazed at the growth that's happened the last 15 years here. So it's definitely a thriving economy. And I think I watched one show, they call this Silicon Prairie, because of all the three major universities here that provide a great resource for technological companies to run their businesses here.
Well, speaking of the universities, this is also where you draw a big core of the volunteer base with Concordia in Moorhead, Minnesota State Moorhead across the river, and North Dakota State. How vital are those three programs to how the volunteer situation and the security work with this event?
Yeah, definitely. I think those Moorhead State and Concordia and North Dakota State work well together, the wrestling programs. And they're vital because we've got three major universities, three programs that help out in the setup and in the security. So that volunteer force is definitely valuable. And we got people that come back, Evan Forty, who coaches at Minot State. There's a lot of those people that come back too and help out. So a lot of programs support this event.
Yeah, I think Nick McGee's been on each of those coaching staffs at some point or another in his career too.
I think he's rotated around, yeah.
He's going to listen to this and be like, man, why you got to throw me under the bus like that? 40, it's okay. But because he comes down from Minot last year and is like, oh, man, I forgot your shirt. But as we look at the other part of this, the volunteers, and we've written stories years over years. There are people that take their vacations out in Fargo, and then it's a family that's working a table together. And then, now I remember there was this little towel tapper about 8 years old, tapping the mat on mat 1 for my first or second year out. And then all of a sudden, hey, what year is school year? She's like, I'm a sophomore in college now. It's like, so these kids have grown up around this tournament, and it really is a family affair for a lot of these volunteers.
No, there's no doubt. We get families from all over the U.S. who come in, and they start contacting me in April wanting to volunteer, and just local wrestlers, like you say. I'm sure if you ask Brandon Metz, when the first time he worked at the Junior Nationals was, it's probably, he worked as a young kid as a towel tapper. So it's definitely evolved, and I think it really has helped the Fargo come up with wrestling because they understand it. They've got another kid, and I'm bad. I know that he signed with North Dakota State from West Fargo. I think starts with an F, but that young athlete, has probably been involved. But West Fargo's been a great program, put out some great kids the last 10 years.
And also, when you kind of looking at things now, USA Wrestling technically supposed to be unbiased, but you have a past history coaching at North Dakota State. Now the program is a Division I program, full-fledged. Roger Kish has had a couple All-Americans the last couple of years. What's it mean to you to see North Dakota State really benefit from this event as a Division I program, not just, a really good Division II program?
Well, again, I do have to be unbiased. I tell everybody I need to be Switzerland. I can't show favoritism to John Smith, Tom Brands, Tom Ryan. I have to be equal. And I think the nice part about this event is it is on a wrestling campus. We sometimes struggle with where we're placing events, and are we doing the good big brother corporate side of things of helping out institutions with wrestling when we do place events? I mean, the trials that we just had at University of Lincoln were tremendous on a college campus, and those are things that we want to continue. We want to help our people that are providing our pipeline, and it does do me well that we are helping North Dakota State. But at the end of the day, it's about the fit, and it's about where this event's going to thrive, and where our numbers are going to get better, and where USA Wrestling can financially make the money that we need to.
From a staffing perspective, you've had a lot of people come and go over the years in events, and some people have elevated themselves through different positions at USA Wrestling. What's one thing you have to tell your staff before they go into their first Fargo?
Well, I really, I guess that's probably one of the knocks on me is I don't communicate enough because I am a shoot from the hip type of guy. I think the long and short of it, what I tell people and what I'm telling my staff right now is, hey, here's the situation. We can plan as much as we want, but you have to be ready to call audibles. You have to be ready every morning. You're going to put your fire suit on and you're going into fire, and there's going to be changes that evolve, and be ready. But I think, we've got enough plans and coordination in place, and the things they go rather smoothly, but you just don't know when, you're going to find a coach that maybe fell asleep in the wrong place, or, an athlete who's not in a training area. So there's different things that evolve throughout the event, but for the most part, we've got things in place that we feel comfortable with. And it is a grind. It's, you're working 14, 16-hour days, and you just get up the next day and it's Groundhog Day. But overall, I think, that's the challenge. To be an event person, you have to have thick skin, and you've got to be willing to work hard.
Yeah, I always say that by the time you get midweek in Fargo, you'll be like, what time is it? And you go Wednesday. Because there is no, it's just like, what day is it? It's day one of Junior Greco. Okay, so that means we got how many days? Yeah, you don't have a clock in Fargo. It's just day one, day two, or whatever. Also, I have no idea what you're talking about in terms of coaches finding places to sleep. I don't know anything about that. Not going to say anything. No. So there's a couple things that are going to be different this year, one of which, and we just had Grant Turner on the previous program from Athlete Performance Solutions, the Nike vendor, and Nike has come in to support USA Wrestling and their national teams and also events. And they're replacing All American Wrestling Supply as Athlete PS has won the bid. How different is that for you going to be to deal with a different vendor for the first time in 2 decades?
Well, I think not different at all. The nice thing is, we've had a chance to sort of have our season and our warm up period. APS, they've been with us throughout since basically March on. In terms of at events, their very first event was the preseason nationals in Cedar Falls. So they've worked out the kinks, so to speak. I think they're ready to go, and it's been a great relationship thus far with USA Wrestling, and I don't think it's going to be anything major in terms of what we're worried about. I think they've got they're geared up and they're ready to go, and I think they're even three-time gear might be assisting a little bit. I think overall, I think it should be a seamless transition.
Speaking of three-time gear, Steve Saxland is one of the co-owners of a new place called Herd and Horns on the south end of campus. What's it like to see Steve still kind of involved in this sport and involved in wrestling? Because he'd wrestled at North Dakota State. He'd been part of the sports commission. Now he's got his gear company and kind of a part owner of a restaurant that people get to go see him again. I know you've had a long relationship with him and guys like Todd Fuller and Steve Saxland that are in the area. What's it like to see those guys again?
Well, it's bittersweet, I'll tell you that, because those guys are doing a great job with their families and also financially. And I recruited both of those guys to North Dakota State and had a great impact in their career. And to see those guys successful is happy. I'm happy for them. But at the same time, I'm wondering, what am I still doing in the sport of wrestling, living like a poor guy? But no, I'm really happy for those guys. They've really done some great things. And I'm glad that they can stay involved in the sport. And there's, obviously that's why I'm involved in the sport, because wrestling's given me so much and it provided a positive impact in my life. And that's why I feel I need to get back to the sport.
As it pertains to this year's event, while this isn't a new concept, we're now we've been with the line bracketing for a couple of years. The individual hand-drawn, hand-paired brackets had changed a couple of years ago. What's the evolution like in running this event and going from the vertical pairing, which a guy could lose in the first round and still win the tournament, to now a true line bracket that you have quarters, you have semis, you have a true blood round? I mean, how has that changed how the event has been run?
I think it's helped coordinate the event a lot better because we understand how many bouts are going to be in a particular session when you do get to the 32. Around a 32, around a 16. You understand how many matches we have. We've been allowed a chance to showcase those matches a lot better. Back when you had the vertical pairing, you could have a final round one, and you just didn't know it. So I think it's really allowed us a chance to showcase it. I think it allows the fans, those moms and dads who aren't used to vertical bracketing, a chance to come in and understand the bracket. So I think the consumer friendliness side of it and the promotion side for us has really been huge with us being able to go to linebacker.
And just so people understand how that changed, that was not an event where Pete Isais goes, we're going to line bracketing. This goes down to the structure of USA Wrestling, and I understand a couple years ago when that change was made, it was a close vote. There were some regions that said no, we like it this way, and there were some regions going no, we want line bracketing.
Oh, I think with anything we do at USA Wrestling, what I tell people is it's got to be 51%. Because everything's going to come down to a vote. And that was a very contentious change that we made. There's still a lot of states that run vertical bracketing at their state level systems. So they love it so much that they still continue to run it at their state level. But very contentious voting, and it's something, again, that I think that it's been positive for USA Wrestling. The only negative that it provides is that, there used to be a chance when someone lost a match that they could still come back and be a champion. But our response to that is tell me one national tournament where you could lose and still end up being first.
Yeah, you're not going to have that conversation with John Smith anytime soon.
Exactly.
Now, one thing that also, the one thing I loved about this, and you'll see some of the folks with the high school rankings. I know I was in part of that group, and like Willie, for example, at Flow with his high school rankings, we talk about how what we liked about the vertical pairing is we knew that we were going to see if I think it was one year Alex Sertzis, Dustin Schlater, and Chirella and Mech Summer, they were all in the same bracket, so you knew that they were going to hit. Versus if they're on the same side, those three are on the same side, you're only going to see that. You might only see one of those events or one of those matches. So that was one of the unique things I liked about it. When we go to the schedule change, why freestyle first this year?
I think it's something that has just kind of evolved throughout the last 5 years. With adding the women in here, it's created some log jams. Basically, after last year's event, we were in a situation where our cadet women went up so much that we just couldn't get them done in the amount of time that we had scheduled for the cadet women, and also our junior duel for the women. They weren't happy at the fact that they couldn't wrestle solely, on their own, and that there was a lot of headache in terms of how we had to schedule the duels. So we went back and basically had to evaluate the whole event. And as part of that, 5 years ago, I started to hear it. The Junior Freestyle Nationals that's what this event was built on. Back 30 years ago, the Junior Freestyle was the event. And people used to come watch it, and it was exciting. And they're like, well, you come in here on a Saturday morning and we have the Junior Freestyle Finals and they're not getting their due. So that was kind of the evolution of us starting to really rethink the schedule. And we're like, well, hey, let's try freestyle first. Let's try to give them their due. And we're also hoping for a very positive effect out of that, because I think a lot of times our athletes are in a mindset that, hey, I'm not going to wrestle Greco because I'm going to save myself for freestyle. So we're hoping that this helps some of those athletes that are better athletes get a mindset that, hey, I'm going to wrestle freestyle, and if I don't place, then I'll probably end up wrestling Greco too. So we're hoping that has a positive effect on the schedule change also.
Yeah, and that was going to be my next question. What's been the opinion of the upper level guys, the senior level guys, the Matt Lindlands of the world, about saying, okay, we're putting Greco last at our junior cadet levels? What do they think about it?
I have not talked to Matt specifically about that or heard him say one way or another how he feels, so I can't say that. I mean, I'm hoping that, obviously, as with anything, I hope he's bought into it, and I'm sure he's fine with it. But yeah, like I said, I haven't had that conversation directly with him.
As we start to wrap up here for the USA Wrestling Cadet and Junior Nationals coming to Fargo yet again for the, I'd say my 19th year. We go back to 1993 for the juniors, 96 for the combined. There's been some interesting stories over the years. One, I'm sure working with Bucky Maughan as an assistant leads itself to some interesting stories. And, of course, there's some fun pranks that have gone on over the years, one of which was, obviously the people count how many times Sandy or Don or Todd or whoever was announcing AL would say with the maroon seats announcements. You remember, you don't sit in the maroon seats. You do not climb over the railing, and you do not sit in the area that is taped off. So, give me one good story you remember over the years that you can actually say on the show that just kind of shows how much fun you guys are having, even though it's a grind of a workplace?
Well, I think that the one that really stands out to me is Jason Eblin, who is kind of assistant, kind of helps out a lot with the security, is also an EMT. And he brought in one of those CPR dummies, and we dressed that person up and put them up in the stands. And Sandy was going crazy, saying, "Do you think you're special? You know, why are you up there sitting in there by yourself?" And it happened to be a mannequin. So I think that was probably one of the best pranks that I've seen, or that I heard about. I didn't know about it going in, but then, you know, everybody was just laughing every time Sandy was pointing to the mannequin, and then they told me, I was like, "Well, you better." I said, "Sandy, that's a mannequin," so she quit doing that. But that's probably one of the funniest that I've been involved with.
Could we get security to Section A, please? It's like, yeah, I remember that one. Now, one other thing is that your relationship with North Dakota State is going to grow even stronger. You're no longer going to be making a lot of money off of it, because some of your money is going to go back to North Dakota State because your son is enrolled there. And what's it like to be like, okay, kid, now you're back here. You just can't pry me away from this town.
Well, you know, I think that the thing is North Dakota State is just a special community. And I think Peter understood that when we were here. He was here for 3 years, and there's a lot of pictures of Peter in those championship photos. So I think in his heart, he loved it. You know, I used to send him back to football and wrestling camp here, and I think it just grew on him. So I think he started to know the coaches, things like that, and it was something that he was excited to do. And it is like a family atmosphere for him. I mean, you know, you talk about Steve Saxon and Todd Fuller. You know, he's got a number of people that I used to coach that he can rely on if his car breaks down, and help him out, or if he just needs a meal. So I think in his mind, it was a situation where he just felt comfortable up here. I think his biggest dilemma was, you know, turning down a lot of other scholarships at the Division II level to come up there and chase his dream. So I applaud him for that and wish him the best of luck. But yeah, I'll be up in Fargo a lot more than I normally have been.
Yeah, and just for people wondering what we're talking about now, and Peter's going to play football, right?
Yep, he's going to play football. Yes, yeah, and that was a tough decision, but in the end, it was you know, his decision to make, and he did the matrix, and I think in his mind, he's happy playing football, and he's seen those the 5 national championships that North Dakota State's won, and I think you know, that winning always I think helps things, and I think, you know, he loves wrestling, and he wouldn't mind to wrestle. I know Rogers talked to him about wrestling, but I think right now in his mind he hasn't totally hung it up yet. But I think the reality is going to set in probably sooner than later.
Yeah, I was just curious if he was even going to consider any possible 2 sports, because he's kind of grown since the last time I've seen him.
Yeah. No, he definitely. I mean, Roger talked to him. He's thinking about going out for wrestling, but I think it's a challenge. When I coached at Division II, there was a handful of athletes that were able to make that transition of football wrestling. But I think the reality is that unless you're a 197 pounder or a heavyweight, it's pretty tough to do. So you know, when you get into the 184s and 174, those guys are moving pretty quick. And now you look at some of those 97 and heavyweights, and those guys are moving pretty quick. So if you're not focused on it 12 months out of the year, it's tough to be successful.
Yeah, I mean, just you look at the sport of football. I was like, yeah, you got a Colorado State wrestling champion on your football team. So hey, you know, it's a pretty good resume there.
Yeah, no, and he was, you know, he did well. He was a first team All-Stater in Colorado, and had just an unbelievable year in terms of what they put together his senior year. They won a state championship, and Peter had a ton of receptions, set the school record for receptions. So he's not a bad football player either. You know, surprisingly, he surpassed anything that I ever thought he would do. So I'm just happy that he continues to love what he does, and I'm just pray to God that they keep him safe on that football field, and we'll see what happens.
All right, now as we break things down, Pete, I'm going to put you on short time, give you 10 questions in 90 seconds, and I don't want you to think about the answers. I want the first thing that comes to your mind. Are you ready?
Yep.
3,
All right, I don't know if you're a social media guy, but who's your favorite person to follow on Twitter or social media or Facebook?
Not much, but Jordan Burroughs.
All right, you win the Olympic gold medal. What are you going to have for dinner?
I'm going to have a T-bone steak.
What's your favorite place to eat in Fargo?
Herd and Horns.
Let's go with favorite place to eat in Colorado Springs.
Ooh, tough one. I'd say Fratelli's.
All-time favorite flavor of Gatorade?
The Fierce Blue.
Favorite video game of all time?
Donkey Kong.
There was one guy from history you'd like to wrestle, regardless of weight class or if it was a historical figure, author, musician, whatever. Who would it be?
Kale Sanderson.
I'm sorry, that's the... are you going to bring a bat for that one?
Yeah, exactly.
People say they want to wrestle Satiev and Burroughs. I'm like, bring a bat. Question 9, who is your funniest teammate of all time?
Todd Fuller.
Now, one last question, and it involves somebody that as you said, is like another son. You've known Chris Moen, who works in the USA Wrestling video tech there for he's been with you for like 20-something years, going back to his career as a Bison athlete. What is your favorite Chris Moen moment, whether it be at NDSU or USA Wrestling?
My favorite Chris Moen moment, I think, was when we were, I used to take him to University Nationals, and that was when it was in Evanston. And I was coaching at that point, but we went and had dinner at one of those fun arcade places, and Chris Moen went and found a pitching game. And I walked over at about 15 minutes after we had eaten dinner, and Chris Moen is just sweating from head to toe because he's throwing the ball so darn hard at that pitching machine. I think that's the funniest story that I know about Chris.
We've got a couple that we can actually save for save for times in Fargo. But Pete, for those who are interested in coming to the tournament, what's one thing you can tell them about it for those who have never been or thinking about coming or they're coming for the first time? And what should they expect this coming week in Fargo?
Well, I think it's, I like to call it controlled chaos, but I tell you what, it is phenomenal to see some of these athletes perform. This is our future here. These are our future world team members, our future Olympians. A lot of people have made their mark in the junior and cadet nationals. And I think that's the thing is it's just the freestyle and Greco, I think, is a lot more high paced, a lot more point scoring. And I think the key is just you come be a fan and follow along. And I think you'll be impressed with the level of athletes. And it just amazes me each year how our athletes continue to get better and better at younger ages and really understand the technical side of the sport.
Awesome. Sounds good, man. Well, we'll see you in a couple days as we get ready to get started here.
All right. Thanks, JB. Take care.
You are listening to the Short Time Wrestling Podcast with my daddy, Jason Bryant.
All right, folks. That was Pete Isais. I didn't really introduce him and say, hey, thanks for coming on the program, because Pete and I have known each other for, again, since 1999. As I'm sitting there getting ready to go to Fargo myself, I've got the turf mug, which, again, will not be used this year because it's not open. So I look back, and we have these badges that we get every year. And this particular year, I will actually explain this, or if you're listening to this by now, you might have already heard the story on Bonus Points with Richard Immel. Him and I did a Fargo preview, and we weren't really talking about the actual tournament. We were talking about the tournament, not the actual wrestling, but memories that go back in the day. But the first badge I have, I'm 19 years old. I am with the Team Virginia as their media director. And there it is, handwritten, Jason Bryant, Delegate, Virginia. Man, I'm like 3 bills in this picture. I am not slim. And I have a lot of these various cards on a lanyard that I bring every year, and I also bring a turf mug every year. And of course, I was 19 when I bought that turf mug, so you can probably put 2 and 2 together that I wasn't doing everything exactly on the level back then. But it's just been this event is so much of my career and how it really got started, and I'll explain that. If you haven't had a chance to go back and listen to Bonus Points, do so. I will explain why this event means so much to me, and how it's impacted my career and shaped my career, as well as the haunts that go with it. But That being said, speaking of this event goes back to 1971. And if you want to know every single All-American, every state, you want to look up somebody and be like, hey, who was that guy that year? You can go by year. You can go by state. You can go by style. Every All-American in history is in this book. And it's my Matt Talk Online Cadet and Junior Nationals All-American Almanac. It retails for $20. It is a digital download, and you buy it once, you buy it for life. It is $20, but if you use the promo code JB by going to matttalkonline.com/Fargo Guide, you will get $5 off, and you will get free updates for life. So when I'm on revision 14 right now, so when I find an error or somebody finds an error, and there's 19,000 plus records in this book. Now I say book because it's 250 pages. It's a digital book. It's an ebook. Basically, it's a PDF that you get, and it's got searchable links and all that stuff. But I do have a couple printed copies that are like $50 a pop. If you're interested, contact me at jason@bryantwrestling.com. Why are they that much? They cost $30 to print, okay, in such small batches. Anyway. But for the non-printed version, you want the digital version that you can Control F and find everything with free updates for life. matttalkonline.com/Fargo Guide. Use promo code JB when you order. It'll save you $5. I will thank you for it because this thing is a crazy undertaking. Now, the next thing I want to do is Scott Green is the head wrestling coach at Wyoming Seminary. It's a prep school in Pennsylvania. Those who know high school wrestling know Scott Green, you know Wyoming Seminary. So what I want to do here is I have not asked Scott permission to do this, but he listens to the show, and he is probably going to, I don't know if he's going to like this or not, but on Wednesday, he posted this to the Wyoming Seminary Facebook group, and I'm going to read it to you because I thought this kind of just captures what it means. So imagine I'm Scott Green, and believe it or not, it's not the first time people have said something that imagine that, Scott and I have a similar look, so to speak. All right, so sorry, I don't know if that's an insult or not, Scott, but all right. Fargo. We sometimes forget how lucky we are as wrestlers to have our big events held in exotic locales like Fargo and Akron. I've been headed to Fargo in mid-July pretty much every year since the mid-'90s. I've flown, I've been on the bus, and I've driven myself. I've been with both Team New York and Team Pennsylvania. I've stayed the dorm so hot you could shower in your bed sheet at 2 a.m. and it would be dry before you got back in your bunk. I've stayed at the Grand Inn and lived to tell about it. Fargo is an adventure, no question. One thing that I always like to reflect on is the relationships you build coaching at these events with your peers. Sure, you could say this happens at every event, but Fargo is unique. You're essentially sequestered away from the rest of the world for the time that you're there. Think of the Fargodome as a submarine, or the Big Brother house. I've coached alongside Olympic gold medalists, NCAA champs. I've been on staffs with kids that I've coached 2 Fargo golds a few years earlier. Fargo and wrestling is cyclical like that. You can make the case that Fargo is less essential to a kid's career nowadays. Other events have gained popularity. In its heyday, it was the only game in town, and it didn't look anything like it does now. No hotels near the venue, no Buffalo Wild Wings. I remember sitting on the back of a pickup truck in a field having a few Diet Cokes with the New York staff. That was nightlife. In a weird way, you could say Fargo and wrestling have grown up together. Now everyone goes. Mom, dad, siblings, etc. It was extremely rare for that to happen at the start of my career. Kids got dropped off for camp and picked up at the airport when it was over. The world has changed a lot since then. You could buy a pack of plane tickets and put names on them later in 1995. Not so much now. The area around the dome, the sport, the world, they've all changed. But Fargo is still Fargo. It tests the athlete's will and resolve like no other event. Whether you go deep into the event or you go 0-2, or if you're just an old coach making multiple trips from Mat 2 to 23, you're going to have a lifetime of memories packed into 7 days. And hopefully a stop sign, too. As written by Scott Green on the Wyoming Seminary Wrestling public Facebook group. Scott, well said, well said, well said. Mic drop. That's all I got for now. If you're in Fargo, come find me. Tweet at Jason M. Bryant. I'm not hard to find. You're going to, yeah. And you know what? I'm not going to say no to a cold, sudsy beverage. So I'd like to thank you for spending your time with me. because you've always got time for Short Time.
This show is part of the Matt Talk Podcast Network. For more wrestling podcasts, head over to MattTalkOnline.com.